Welcome back, Rio Grande Guardian viewers. It's great to see you again. Once again, a very special guest, my good friend, Ricardo Rubiano. Ricardo, I hope I can call you a friend.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Cool. You've been very supportive and complimentary about the Rio Grande Guardian, so thank you for that.
You bet.
So we're here today to talk about your company, Open EB5, but in the main, up until now, when we've covered the Open EB5 company, we've been chatting to and having a podcast with your colleague Emilio Guzman, okay, who is based in Houston. So before we get into the specifics of the company, tell us how you first met Emilio and what's he like as a partner?
Well, he's great, first of all, as a partner. We met in Houston in a couple meetings where the EB5 program is extremely structured, right? Because of its benefits, its opportunities. So once you involve the federal government in a program like that, it's very structured. So I knew that we were not going to be able to do that ourselves, nor did we want to, really. So at a invitation, I flew up to Houston, spent some time with him, and not to get too much into the details of how best it works, in our opinion, right, as a business, but he felt, and I felt, that the type of products we were working on in the Rio Grande Valley very much suited the EB5 program, right? It's a long runway. The housing projects that we have, the industrial projects that we have, sometimes they have a long runway. EB5 requires a long runway. So those two match a little bit. If you said, hey, let's build a restaurant, that doesn't have a long runway. Usually the space is ready, you can just move in, you know, and so it's not, but the type of work that we do was suited. And that's where we began discussions of.
But Emilio's an expert in this
100%,
field, right?
100%.
But in this case, did you go to him and say, I've got an idea for EB5 down here, or did he think it?
It was a combination. It was sort of two people that were going to be friends coming together, discussing things and saying, this is how I do it, this is how you do it, this is what I need for this program to work, this is what I need for my developments to work. And so you can drill down into both the high interest rates today. That could be a source of a solution that EB5 offered, and like I mentioned, the longer runway. Some of the multifamily projects that we have will take 2-3 years, right, to get them to where you move a person in. That's a long runway. EB5 is okay with that, and it works that way. So sort of a combination of conversation.
Okay. So for the uninitiated, people just tuning in and learning of EB5 for the first time, perhaps explain how the whole concept of this is the development happens because it's a vehicle through which a foreign national can make an investment in the United States and produce so many jobs. And in return, that satisfies the federal government that they can be given a legal residency card, a permanent residency card.
Pathway to citizenship.
Yeah. So what's happened with the government recently, and what are the basic rules now for an area like ours, which is deemed economically disadvantaged?
Challenged.
Yeah.
So the rules haven't changed. Okay. The Congress enacted this into law in the early 1990s. So the program's been set and been modified, updated over the years, once or twice. But the program is set. Nothing has been modified as of late. So in overall economic terms, if you can import capital and not use domestic capital, you're at an advantage because you can continue using whatever domestic capital you have for ongoing projects. But if I can bring capital from foreign countries to help grow the United States, that's a huge advantage, right? I don't have to ask you or neighbors or American funds. They can continue doing what they do. So anytime you add capital inflow for specific projects like this, that's a huge advantage, right? So that would be the first underlying condition of the EB5 program. And then number two, you're vetting them through your lender, through your bank, through the federal government, through attorneys. So these people are very well vetted by the time we get them, right? So it's not it's a very structured program that is knowing now after 30 years of real estate development, this is a very important tool, especially during high interest rates, which we're under now and probably will continue to be under for many years. And then the growth of population in the United States is such that we're not meeting that demand, right? So in macro terms, you have to import capital. Just like you have to import labor at times. I know that that's a touchy subject, but the United States has always been built by importing technology or developing its own technology, but bringing in strong labor, right? We've had it occur over a series of the 200 years, right? The English first, then and Germans, and then the Irish, right? Then the Mexicans from the South, the Chinese from the West. So we've always imported the things that we needed. And so importing capital is a good resource, is a good source of resource, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So your company is called Open EB5, and your first project in the Rio Grande Valley is a housing project in Pharr.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So that's a very good example of the difficulty, for example, of financing a project like that in high interest rate environment. If you look around the Rio Grande Valley, there continues to be there continues to be affordable housing projects that taxpayers fund, right? Taxpayers are paying for that project or the equity in that project. So right now it's difficult to find new startup housing projects because we refer to it in the industry as penciling out. So they don't pencil out. That means that your cash flows, projected cash flows, cannot service the debt at normal levels of debt. So you've got to reduce your debt significantly. That means you increase your capital or your equity, but the requirements for that equity have continued to be high. So investors are saying, hey, I still want my higher return for that equity. The projects basically are not penciling out. That's why you don't see a lot of purchases, you don't see a lot of transactions, certainly not new development. So that's where Midtown Pharr, this project, was sort of stuck. And that's where, when Emilio and I got together, I said, listen, if what you're describing fits this thing like a glove, then we should try it. And that was, a while back, and we put it together, and sure enough, it pencils out, which is what we're in the middle of right now. You reduce the debt significantly because your big portion of the equity now comes from the EB5 program. Well, local regional lenders, like you would imagine, all the banks that you know or all the players that you know in the industry, they get very comfortable when you are putting them in a first lien position with 55% loan to cost, right? That's loan to cost. That means that the other half of the money is coming from somewhere else, and they've got a first lien position. And so that's a great example of where Midtown Pharr begins to work by bringing all of these resources together.
So whereabouts in Pharr is it located, and how many houses in the project?
It's 168 units permitted in the city of Pharr. There's the location is Flag and Polk, and it is, for lack of a better location, pretty close to Topgolf on the expressway on the south side of Interstate 2.
And I understand you've got, if maybe more than 50% of the investment money you're looking for from the foreign nationals. Emilio was telling us you're doing very well with that project. You're getting interest.
Oh yeah, certainly. And I want to say that as of the last meeting we had, I think we had 8 out of 13 folks committed to that project. So that's been for the short period of time that we've been at it, it's been very successful.
What's your
The United States is a good country to invest in.
A lot of people want to move here.
Yeah, well, they want to first invest here, and then they want to have access, right, for shopping, for second homes. I don't know if necessarily people want to move here because a lot of these folks, are from other countries. They just want to have the flexibility to travel in and out like we all do, right? If we go to Europe, we don't think twice about it, right? We have that affordability of just saying, get on a plane. You might have to do some customs and so forth, but it's not transitioning, like if you had to visit Russia, that would be, right, a chore in and of itself.
What's your time frame on that particular project? When do you think you might finish it?
So we're pretty good, having done these a few times under regular financing conditions. So it'll be about the same. That's EB5 doesn't affect the timing. So we break ground. We like to have at month number 7, month number 8, we like to have our first big building and the clubhouse. The clubhouse is important for these because that's where people start to visit. They start to inquire as they're migrating into the valley. Where am I going to live? What's the nicest apartments we can find? So they start inquiring. So month number 7 to month number 8 is the start of the first person. And then about month number 12, 13 is the delivery of the last building. And that's about the range of once we break ground. That seems pretty standard. We've done this a few times.
And how much interest will there be for tenants? There is affordable housing. The demand's never going to go away.
Right, and not only that, but you've got outside of what you're doing, you've got a huge demand from people migrating into the Rio Grande Valley, right? So that's something that you may not be successful in the mom and pop apartment complex where you don't offer a full range of amenities. They certainly look for those things, and the tenants look for those things. So our project in Brownsville, which is identical to the one in Pharr, we cater to LNG, and so we look to inbound manufacturing, inbound, and so it ties in together with everything else happening in the valley. We like Pharr. We think Pharr, especially that area, right? The medical node of McCall, South Edinburgh, North McAllen, sort of West Pharr in that region up there, Jackson, and that region of the valley. That medical node has been serviced very well from an apartment standpoint. We have land up there. We will have a project in South Edinburgh eventually. We're just letting the units that are there absorb, which they do, right? So the last big cycle was pre-pandemic, and we had thousands of units get developed. And some of us, including myself, wrongfully, I was a bit concerned with that many units. But then, you visit any of them and they're at 96, 97, 98% occupancy. And so the projections that the experts put out based on census, based on move-ins, based on population growth, those are fairly accurate. And those demands put units in the Rio Grande Valley in the thousands we're behind thousands of doors.
So again, no worries at all about bringing in those last few investors from presumably Mexico. That's going to be fine. You're going to hit the quota you're looking for there. So the funding's going to be in place for that project.
Yes. Yeah, we feel comfortable. Yeah. And then with regional lenders in the position that I mentioned to you being, 55% loan to cost, forget loan to value, right? In loan to value, they're probably down closer to 37, 38%. Probably better than that. That's an amazing position to be in.
Okay, let's fast forward a bit because Emilio has told us your next project. You're doing something even bigger in Brownsville.
Okay, so
that's the plan.
Yeah, we own the land already. We own the land there on the expressway, on interstate. Down there, I think it's Interstate 69 because of the way it's contoured. So the new address is Interstate 69. It's at the Brownsville Sports Park. That's called Brownsville Parkside Trails, right? That is a hybrid of affordable housing with market rate housing, because Brownsville is really far behind on housing units. They are one of the fastest growing MSAs in the United States, certainly in Texas. LNG drives that, SpaceX drives that, the Port of Brownsville drives that. So they've got quite a demand for the migration of people into, well, you got someone like Elon Musk basically telling the entire planet, move to Brownsville, he's going to get a reaction. So SpaceX and LNG have done well for us down there.
What do you think the time frame will be for that project?
So that is a very specific loan that we're trying to obtain, which initial feedback is yes, obviously, because of the demand for housing. The demand for housing in Brownsville, the last report I had was 7,600 units behind. But I don't want to confuse the issue, because sometimes people say, well, how come I've got these units empty, or why? If you don't have the right product, right? If you don't have the right amenities and everything that market product is asking for, then you're going to struggle, right? You're gonna have to find a way to market yourself to that demand, right? I don't want to make it sound like anything will rent. You've got to bring in a high quality product, like we've got at Midtown Brownsville. This is Parkside Trails, the new one. So that one is a little bit of a shift where I'm from Brownsville originally, so that's got a little bit of a shift. Without making it too complicated, it is affordable housing, and so affordable housing is typically tax credit based, which then come from the state and through federal income tax savings and things. We're going to replace that model with EB5 money, right? So now we're doing it 100% onboarding ourselves of every dollar spent. There might be some minor savings of like sales tax. We won't pay sales tax on the materials purchased because of the nature of the project. But more importantly, light tech projects in the past have been notoriously, I don't want to make it seem like they're all like that, but they skimp on the amenities because they're trying to save every dollar they can. We are going to come in with, and it's being designed this way, with things like the clubhouse with learning centers, a place for kids to do their homework. Because the demographics shift quite a bit from market rate, which is Midtown Pharr, Midtown Brownsville. Those are single individuals, right? They're making a certain income. They've got a great job. They're usually moving in from out of town to work here. When you do affordable housing, that's more family-based, right? There's children involved. It's amazing. In Midtown Brownsville, we have no children, right? We have no children living there. But they're all working at SpaceX, and they're all working at LNG or the Port of Brownsville, Eternium and Forza. So that is unique. When you've got the affordable housing component, then you're talking about families. So you've got to shift the amenities to match that criteria. Indoor, outdoor party room, right, for birthday parties, things like that. I don't know if that makes. I know it's very minor but we drill down all the way down to servicing that person as best we can, right, so that the tenant feels like they truly have a home.
Do you finish the Pharr project first before starting Brownsville, or will they be?
By the nature of the loan, okay, so no.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, no, because the Brownsville project is on a 12-month window that's set by the loan that we're seeking, that we've been invited to participate in. It's a D4 HUD construction loan. So that loan closes in about 10 months from now. And I would say that Pharr would be finishing about 10 to 12 months from now.
Is it too early to say that the Pharr project's been so successful, is going to be successful, that you and Emilio are looking beyond Brownsville? The Valley has the capacity for more EB5 programs.
So, without a doubt, there is a housing demand, but we stretch outside of the Valley, right? We are in South San Antonio on the I-10 corridor between Houston and San Antonio. There's a lot of logistics there, some manufacturing. There's still a lot of industrial development in that zone. The only corridor right now, unfortunately, that's a bit bogged down is San Antonio north to north of Austin. There, you're starting to see some significant product come online, and so they'll have inventory for about 6-7 years. That's from what I'm reading. And so even HUD, who sponsors some of the loans that we use for development, right now is saying, please hold off on working in that specific area. But I do feel that there's some secondary markets that'll be coming, not today, but that we can start looking forward to 2 or 3 years from now, which is like that Interstate 10, right? You've got our own triangle reversed, because you've got the old classic Dallas, Houston, San Antonio triangle. We're starting to see the development of a reverse triangle: San Antonio, the Rio Grande Valley, Houston, right? So that triangle is now being quietly.
You've made the headlines there. You've made our lead story. Is that for sure?
Well, think about the energy development of Corpus Christi, the energy development of the Rio Grande Valley, the energy development of how that interconnects. You're starting to see very quietly the lithium manufacturing facility in Robstown. So I'm not saying that it's today, but we don't live in the world of today. We live 3 or 4 years from now, right? It takes me that long just to get one unit on the ground. That's from the word go. So I have to pay attention to what is the federal government doing? Why are they spending so much money interconnecting San Antonio with the Rio Grande Valley? They've spent the money connecting San Antonio with Houston. That leg stands on its own. I think if anything, that starts to feed down. It's feeding into the triangle, right? People are developing inside the triangle, the original Texas Triangle. But I think we'll be back in 5, 7 years talking about the Southern Triangle. You've got the Gulf Coast, you've got multiple ports, you've got Brownsville, which is basically the port of northern Mexico. You've got Corpus Christi, which is a massive energy port. Houston is a world-class port.
So you're saying the new triangle is going to be Houston to San Antonio to
the Rio Grande Valley. And you've got Monterey somehow. You've got to figure out the little pieces, but you've got Monterey, Laredo, right sitting there. Laredo's a huge logistics through port, right? So you've got to, maybe you don't end up with a triangle. It's just a natural way of mirroring the Southern Triangle. But I think that anything between that triangle, Monterey, that's huge, right? Monterey's twice the size of Houston. So you've got to, you can't discount that like at all. You've got to count that.
So I'm sort of pleased we've veered into development as a whole, but obviously I do want to come back to Open EB5 as the project.
Open EB5 is a way to pay for a lot of these things, right? First, with just us. So I envision that there will be 3, 4, 5 more EB5 regional centers, either doing business in the Valley or operating in the Valley or looking for projects in the Valley. They're just so structured that it's a heavy lift. It's not just, oh, it's a fund, we're going to throw some money at a project. Sometimes people think that way. That's why I did not do it that way. I went and, Emilio and I got together, and then that's when I realized EB5's been on my radar for 10 years, probably more, 15 years. But I've always seen the lack of success when you don't pay attention to the structure.
There's been a few failures there.
Absolutely, because of the lack of organization, of attention, right? It's like creating a fund and saying, oh, it's going to sit on the edge of my desk. It doesn't work that way. That fund needs a CEO. That fund needs structure, budgets. It's got to be its own business.
So before we finish, I did say I would ask you to give us some big picture, paint the big picture of industrial development or development in general in the Rio Grande Valley. As you say, you're originally from Brownsville, but you have a lot of business interests in both the upper and the lower valley.
Well, we're in my office in McAllen, right? So
we're in your office in McAllen.
Yeah.
So how do things look right now in either the upper or the lower valley or both?
So you and I have talked a lot about data. You can manipulate data, but it's not going to lie, right? Data can guide you, can help you make better decisions, like AI, right? AI just manipulates that data to give you the result to answer the question. I shouldn't say the result you want, but to answer the question that you have. So then you could take a step back and say, okay, what drives manufacturing, right? What drives investment? What drives growth? Capital, labor, and management, right? Those are the 3 primaries that you're talking about. So when you look at Europe, for example, they've got a tough situation on their hands, right? Their population under 18 is like 11%. They've got to import labor, no matter what. When somebody's pouring concrete in Spain, it's somebody that's not from Spain, right? And then you can figure out where they're coming from, whether it's the Middle East or Africa, that they're migrating people in to do that work. The rest of the United States, we're okay. It's not bad, it's not tragic, it's not crazy, but we're about 23%, 18 and under. In the Rio Grande Valley, just by looking at the school districts, looking at how STC, UTRGV, right, TSTC, TSC, all of these universities and the volume of kids in the independent school districts and, magnet program, magnet schools, everybody. I mean, it's over 50%, right? So we exceed the population of San Antonio with people under 18 years old in the entire flow of
I've heard Emilio talk about that. He's read the numbers as well. You've got to in your business.
So then what's important is for us to start having conversations with manufacturers, with entities that are trying to relocate, that are saying, look, I want an opportunity to have affordable labor in a area where I can quickly expand, right? I'm not going to be facing a lot of red tape. I want to do things the right way. And as a developer, that's where ethically, right, you're trying to build the best subdivision, to build the best master plan community, to build the best industrial park, right, the best apartments. And so it's up to you. I mean, I could build an apartment without a swimming pool. I could do it without a gym. I could do it without Peloton equipment inside the gym. But you choose to do that because it enhances the quality of life. So it's an affordable rate. And so primarily being a Hispanic market here in the Rio Grande Valley, we have certain characteristics that say, okay, I want to be gregarious with, I want to interact with my family. I don't necessarily want to live by myself in Minnesota or Nebraska. So you have that tendency, and all that adds up, right? So the age of the population, our demographic stereotypes, I guess, if you want to call them those, but we tend to want to be together, and so all that helps. You're finding things when you travel to Austin and Houston, you start talking to the labor force, and they're from the Rio Grande Valley, right? So if you started presenting opportunities, we were doing a lot of retail development, and those are good jobs. Those are good jobs, but they're not the best jobs, right? And so that's something that we all have to be mindful in the Rio Grande Valley and to work as a team. Because, for example, if you build an Olive Garden in Brownsville, which I did, Houston doesn't care. If you build a McAllister's Deli in Edinburgh, which I did, San Antonio doesn't care. But if you go talk to Samsung and you're going to try somehow, some way, or Foxconn, right, or somebody that's meaningful today, and you're going to bring them and talk to them about coming to the Rio Grande Valley, you need to realize it's not just you against, the guys across the street. It's the folks up north, and now you're taking on the state of Texas. So you're playing varsity now. You're not just messing around trying to open, 4 or 5 stripes, on the corners of once you start seeing little cities like Donna get cheddars and, the things that they want like that, then you know that the migration of real estate development is moving forward. We're going to run out of spots for Olive Garden, right? We can't do 6 or 7 like we thought 9 years ago. They're done, right? They're already in place. They're already consuming. So now the next natural evolution is that industrial development, the better jobs. And so the cities that have a platform, that have product, I don't even know how many industrial parks around us in Pharr. I think it's 6 or 7, and we're all talking to tenants. We're all talking about doing deals, and they're much bigger buildings than we originally thought. 150, 200,000 square foot users. That's a more commonplace today than it was just 24, 36 months ago.
So in your opinion, what are our chances of the Samsungs and the Foxconns?
Well, okay, so you, on the surface, and the surface being the cheerleading and the hey, we're gonna, those are more dreams, right? What you want is you want the guy that's making the panels for Whirlpool, right? And so there's a heavy lift. You and I maybe, the best example I can give you is like people agree or disagree. I can give you the example of SpaceX, right? They first started making just metal, welded, shooting it up, blowing it up, it lands, it crashes, it burns. Then the next one was, okay, now we're getting it up into the atmosphere, right? But then it comes down and it crashes and burns. Now we're getting it to where it's in orbit. So there's a very quick progression of manufacturing standards. In the Valley, we don't know how to build a car. I mean, we just don't. There isn't a workforce for that. STC can try to chime in, but they don't have, it's going to take a while. So we need to start, we can go quickly, but we need to start working metal right? We seem to have a tendency for metal in the Rio Grande Valley. I'm not talking about just, blacksmithing. I'm talking about really stamping products, working products. And so those type of, we need to see what Monterey needs, right? Especially now with tariffs. That's a big conversation that we're having down in Monterey all the time. My colleagues are down in Mexico City discussing with folks saying, hey, 15, 20, 25% is a big number. How do I get around that? And so the Valley's poised for that. So before you start talking about Apple, talk to Foxconn. And when you talk to Foxconn, talk to them about, how do I make the plastic case? How do I make this switch? How do I make this componentry that ends up, right? Because Matamoros, Reynosa has been filled with that for years, right? The motorized manufacturing companies or the electric motor companies, that we all are familiar with, that component goes into a much more evolved component later. Could be a DoD product, right? You don't know that something you made in Matamoros could end up all the way into a sophisticated system. That's how I think the Valley is going to, that's what we're seeing anyway. And when we talk directly to tenants, when they tell us, look, I need a building this big, I need these to be the features, we're not talking to Whirlpool, we're not talking to Samsung, but we're talking to people that do business with them, right? And so I think that evolution will take shape, but you've got to work your way into it. You're not going to start clean room manufacturing. You don't have the ability. We don't have the technology for it. We don't have, right? We don't have that infrastructure. We just don't have the infrastructure for that, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So we got to start somewhere.
Well, we should probably leave it at this point, Rick, for today.
Yeah.
I know we could talk for hours more.
Probably, right?
We could. But I'd like to invite you back again.
Absolutely.
We'll do this again, and both to learn more about the program, how it's going, your company, but also the big picture you paint of your knowledge of the industry and what's happening in the market is fascinating.
Thank you so much.
At least for me. I
Thank
hope
you.
for the viewers as well.
The Valley is one large metroplex, including both sides. We say that in retail. So it's awesome to have been here for the past 30 years doing this. Yeah.
Thank you so much for today's interview.
Yeah, thanks. Let's go.